Hello and welcome to the Fabrity Talks podcast, where we talk about the current IT trends. If you have any questions about the subject that we cover, don't hesitate to drop us a comment or a message. If you want to know more about what we do, visit our blog at fabrity.com or check out the links in the episode description. My name is Michał, I'm a digital marketing manager here at Fabrity, and my today's guest is Grzegorz Sperczyński.
Hello everyone.
Grzegorz, you are a digital transformation and business development specialist, and you had pleasure of working with top international brands, and you have quite a passion for UX and business analysis. That's why we meet today to talk about how to include more business analysis in software, web, mobile development and all other IT projects. So Grzegorz, pre-project preparation is crucial to project management and to estimate scope, requirements, well, you name it. Rapid discovery through Sprint Zero is vital for feasibility and efficiency of the project itself. So our episode 6 is called Business Analysis in IT Projects. Grzegorz, I think we could start with the term Sprint Zero. What is it?
Well, some say that Sprint Zero is not defined in the Scrum framework. However, it's referred to a business analysis sprint or scoping session. It's good to have something like this, like a tool for the project planning to check out the approach that structures and identifies business requirements. It's a tool and technique to facilitate the development of the initial product story, but it's crucial for the planning of the project components, such as budget, time, technology, all those things that make the project defined as something that will come.
Yeah. Well, some people don't like the name Sprint Zero, and so this is basically analysis that is made pre-project launching. I mean, to set up all the things, right?
Yeah, I think that, there are two schools, okay? Because in one school, the Sprint Zero definition where you have, where you view essential tasks to be completed, sometimes are engaged in Sprint 1 or Sprint 2, sometimes they are covered in the initial phase of the project. Yet, if you have a track record like Fabrity of projects that you have already done, you have to keep in mind that for business owners like, for example, CFO, like product owner, the business owners like the sponsors of the project, there are some crucial information that should include like the project vision, what should be done in the future, what should be done now, how it should be done. So you have to make an initial estimate that summarizes those information rather than pre-plan the future items. So you have to set up like a Sprint Zero, so we call it.
Yeah, let's stick with that.
Yeah. So you have to set up a set of functions, a set of things you have to do before the project starts. For example, just to assess if there is an economical reason to start the project.
So I would say that every project needs Sprint Zero, despite the name of it, because I was reading something that there is some strong critic of the name itself, but let's leave that behind. So would you say that every project needs a Sprint Zero or business analysis sprint, however we call it?
Yeah, it's sometimes, it depends on the type of the project. The Sprint Zero may be defined as something very large. When there is a complex project where something requires a lot of things or coordination of different departments, sometimes it may be a form of 2-3 workshops just to assess some things. And I think it's because of the history, because sometimes a pre-configuration of the project may be acknowledged as something that was from the fixed type projects or typical project management techniques or tools that were used before. While Scrum is more defined on the target, on the goal of the project, of the definition of done. So The Sprint Zero is like something that helps to use some techniques from the cascade type of the projects or techniques to use those techniques that were good.
Okay, Grzegorz, maybe it would be easier if we could just, list the steps included in this example Sprint Zero process. I mean, what is going to be prepared, how it's going to be performed during Sprint Zero.
Well, a good example of such things that Sprint Zero should involve is like, for example, first, backlog item or backlog items. So the team should prepare a list of product backlog items that should be prioritized. So you have to think what is most important for the project, what should be done first, what can be done later. There are tools and techniques like Moscow technique that can be used. Then,
so the backlog for the whole project to come?
Not necessarily, because it's really hard to define it in the Scrum. So you know the global goal of the project, you know what you should do in the first steps.
You got me here. Yeah, sorry. It was poorly said.
It's not a fixed project, but you can try to assess really first steps of the project. Like, for example, you can establish some UX works, analytics works that can help you to provide with further backlog. So a backlog is a living thing. So it's really good to know the first steps to configure it properly. As an echo of this is a well-defined list of non-functional requirements be highlighting key aspects such as, for example, environmental setup, architecture design, performance parameters. So whenever you set up a team, for example, a business analyst, a UX designer, an IT architect, those people can help you to assess, to think globally, to get a really high-level scope of view what should be done. Then you can set up roles, responsibilities. You can talk what is the role of each team member. So, the Scrum guides defines personas like team members. However, as we know it, for example, from the PMI project framework, it's good to sometimes assign one task or one role or one responsibility that is attached to a specified person. So it really helps project managers or line managers, all the team members that can be a part of the project, help to manage the responsibility. So this is...
Okay, so that is aligned with probably team throughput expected during the project.
Yes, however, we should not mix it with the capacity or velocity of the team, yet it's more like the responsibility. For example, you can see best competences of your team. For example, one team member is best in UX research, and the second team member may be best in UX optimization of the customer journey. So you know your team best, and you know what's required for the project. So you can set up those responsibilities in terms of best fit competences. So this is really something that often people forget when Scrum is mixed with an outsourcing or body list types of projects. So it's a typical mistake that project managers do when they see the competences globally. You have to know your people. You have to know the team. So the Sprint Zero pre-configuration also enables you to know the people, to know which responsibilities are crucial for them to manage.
So we mentioned you mentioned backlog. Is there a roadmap on that?
Yeah, it's
Sprint Zero.
Roadmap is also one of those things that should be written or managed, because you have to know where you have to go. The difference is that you do not have a technical specification that signs off your project. You have to have a goal, but it should be defined other big steps. So yeah, the roadmap is a thing that helps the team follow the right track. Also, I think the initial plan, or for example, design plan, all those things or documents that may help the team understand the true role of the project in the organization. So it's one of the crucial things that should be done before the start of the project. The team has to know what is crucial for the organization and what the effect should bring at the end.
Okay, what about environment, hardware, frameworks?
As for the architecture, all those things that are defined among the team, it mostly in the Sprint Zero is on a very high level. So there is a huge cooperation with, for example, business analyst and an architect. So, for example, you have a team that should make something like an app that should be compatible with the environment that is already in the organization. So you have to see the context. Sometimes it is not possible. So you have to address those things that may happen during the project. For example, you have to use the cloud while all the infrastructure generally is on premise. So what you have to do to fulfill, for example, compliance or safety requirements using the cloud in such manner. So this is one of the examples that may happen.
How does the development of a Sprint Zero plan looks in coordination with the roadmap?
Well, Sprint Zero usually takes place before the formal start of the project. So the main goal of the sprint is for the development team is to come together to develop a minimal number of user stories, define a project skeleton, do the story mapping, develop something like a goal for the final product. So this sprint should be kept really lightweight and on a high level, So the roadmap is maybe defined as simple steps or epics of the project. However, you do not focus on this stage on the definition of the backlog or user stories that are very detail defined. Okay, so you do not build something like a technical specification. It's typical for the waterfall frameworks. You have to think like a little bit of a hybrid of waterfall and the Scrum technique, yet on a really high level.
So some necessary preparation without really outlining the end product.
Yeah, I always like to show the examples from life. So, for example, you have to build a house, So a really high-level planning is that that you have to buy ground, you have to go to the architect, you have to check out with authorities what can be done. You have to summarize some assumptions for the house to be built. In general, that the house will have some parameters like the size.
Yeah, but you're not defining where the bathroom will be.
Yeah, and especially and the color of the walls. So it comes really later.
Okay, so you gave us some look and feel of the Sprint Zero itself. So let's try to talk a little about main benefits that are brought to the organization by performing this Sprint Zero. So what would that be?
Well, there are really some useful things that happen in the Sprint Zero. So first, you get a quick analysis. So if you look into the analysis, especially when there is a cooperation of team members like architect, like UX designer, maybe sometimes UI designer, because sometimes there is crucial CI integrity, especially in enterprise class projects. You engage product owners, you engage business owners, sometimes from many departments. So you can summarize and quickly analyze and pack it into tools. So you can define resources, scope, you can make something like a really quick feasibility study. It can lead you to better decision making. So at the end, product owner and the owners of the project, they are available to take some decisions, direct decisions that are crucial for the start of the project. So it's like the magic button you can push, go, no go with the project. So it's really crucial in terms of the initial analysis, rather than thinking what will happen when you start the project when the money is already burned.
Grzegorz, I feel I have to ask here a quite direct question. You know, I was working in sales for a long time, and you are working with clients, consulting all different sorts of projects. That kind of analysis is something you will do one way or another, even if the client will not go for the sprint zero. Is it correct? I mean, you have to do it in order to place an offer.
Yeah. It all depends on the details that are also defined, for example, in a request for proposal. But the analysis, I think, is crucial because you have to be a consultant, because projects now are really complex. They're define a lot of things that happen behind the project, technical project itself. So the IT team is engaged in the processes really in the last phase of such analysis. So you have to talk, for example, with chief financial officer, you have to talk with marketing team, you have to talk with sales team. Sometimes when there is e-commerce, you have to talk with the team that manages the e-commerce. For example, a simple website may be defined as a lead generation tool for the marketing team. It may support with content that is crucial for the e-commerce module to live, etc. Sometimes.
Okay, and one other question. So, and how do you feel if the client? Because it happens. We know that it happens when the client has got that kind of analysis performed by other entity or other company that had a project and it didn't go that well, and the client is, visiting our site, is leaving details, has a project for us, and he says, well, all the analysis is made, it is here, please put the price tag on it. What would you advise in that case scenario?
Well, first, you have to look into this analysis, because there are some tools and techniques that should be done. If it's done under a framework, if it's done properly, it's okay. So we can use this data, you can discuss the concept. We cannot think about the offer like something like a fixed or a closed box. So you have to think outside the box. So you have to see if all the things that should be made during the analysis were addressed, like, for example, environment or costs of maintenance that are related to the technology that was recommended. This is one of the examples, okay? Or, for example, from the UX world, you have to see if the offline and online customer journeys were addressed, are there cross functions of those customer journeys? So you have to have the global picture. So such analysis is really helpful. So you can prepare for that often basis on someone else's concept. However, if it's done properly, if it's done under a framework or under there were some tools used, like, for example, a Moscow analysis, like mind mapping tools, then you can use it and help your client more to understand the project. You have to learn the project by yourself, because whenever you are outside of the organization, one of your assignments as an IT company like Fabrity is to acknowledge what this project will do in the organization. So at the end, you have to know what.
And this is not obvious in some cases.
Yeah, a lot of companies, IT companies, focus just on the technical side. In Fabrity, we have a really holistic approach, because you have to see if, for example, the project is economically justified. Is the technology properly adjusted? What will you do with the project in perspective of 3-5 years? Will it not generate technological debt? Will it not be too expensive? Should it be used in one form or another? Should it address requirements of the teams of the organization? So sometimes you have to think like you are a team member of the company. So Sprint Zero enables you to think like the customer, like an employee of the customer, like a partner. So this is crucial. I think that's one of the advantages that Fabrity has. So we try to think like the project was made for ourselves, like it was one of the projects that we do.
Okay, let's get back to our list of benefits. So we said quick analysis. I feel that we also said more insights into the project. How about efficiency? Well, I think we also covered efficiency. And what would you add? I think maybe that's the question, really.
In terms of efficiency, we didn't mention one thing, because it's not the costs. The cost efficiency is one of the things, but the efficiency of the team. Because in the Sprint Zero, you can set up the team that is in best fit for the assignment. For example, a programmist that really knows e-commerce, has a history, for example, made a own shop, or was engaged in some task or project that was in some organization. So he has historical knowledge, he has know-how that can be used in terms of the project. It all comes into another step or thing that is addressed. It's like building more insights. In the term thinking outside the box, if you are in a organization, for example, corporation, you can be very innovative, you can be well trained, you can have great knowledge, but there is always a huge advantage when someone comes from outside this box you live in it, because you can have a track record of things that were done differently in other organizations. You can see the bird's eye view of things that should be done differently, better, maybe worse. What is the advantage of one solution, the disadvantage of the second one, etc. So the more insights you have, so IT company becomes a partner that brings more insights. This is and in Sprint Zero, you can conclude them into a form of, for example, in the mind mapping process, in a form of closed things or tasks that should be performed. For example, I remember one time we had RFP that there was an assignment to build a mobile application. So one of the things that we saw that was that the personas of the project were addressed really in a simplified form. So we consulted we've talked with the product owners that it would be good to make some simple research, maybe 2-3 interviews, just to get a view what the customer needs, what's the problem. So because it was an insurance company project, so we've made some interviews with customers. We've made a review with the sales personas, and also what was the one crucial thing in this, with a couple of persons that were engaged in the process of agreement signing. So in the back office, having this insight of 3 personas, we've built up a concept that was totally different from the first view of the project. So it was a huge advantage because, typically there are only 1 or 2 personas. There may be sub-personas, but typically IT companies focus only on the end user. But the definition of the end user is sometimes very broad, because the end user is the user of the application, and it may be also, for example, a back office worker. So you have to see the full view.
Okay, so we could probably boil it down to a design-centric approach and team involvement,
and by
team
design
orientation, things like that.
centric, we also think about the holistic approach to the analysis, because these times I think business analysts have to think like also UX designers have to think like front-end developers. Front-end developers have to think about the work and back-end developers do, etc., etc. So it's a chain of references, a chain of things that happen inside the project. So if you think about it like a design center process, so the design is not only acknowledged as UX or UI works. It's a design process like you were building, for this example, house. You have to think like an architect, you have to think like a ground owner, you have to think like your wife, for example, so which is one of the crucial decision makers. You have to think in a holistic way.
Grzegorz, you mentioned this case of an app for the insurance company. Would you say that there are some industries mostly good, let's say, for this kind of approach? I mean, I'm thinking about any kind of automation projects. What else?
Generally speaking, the Sprint Zero config should be in any type of the project. However, there are some like industry-specific projects that may involve more competence or more know-how.
Right. So I mean, the question would be where you would strongly advise not to bypass this step in the project. And, well, you obviously will do some kind of analysis, and this is obvious, but there are a lot of other things that should be done in Sprint Zero. So what would be your kind of project where you would say we won't do it without Sprint Zero?
Well, Sprint Zero should not be overpassed whenever you have a project, when you're doing something first. For example, if you are thinking about a project that will be defined, will address some new things, will adapt your project, you have to think about the innovation you will use. It's more like a R&D project. Sprint Zero then is crucial. Whenever you have a project that is one of the project in the pipelines, it's like a maintenance project, there is no need to do this. So you may just address the role of business analysts, which may have one of the assignments to keep this in mind. However, it's a constant process then. Whenever you do something new, the requirement for the Sprint Zero is crucial.
So what does your clients you're talking with think about it? Because there's always this idea that you're going there and saying we should do it with Sprint Zero, and well, you've got some opponents from other companies who are saying no, we will just do it. So it involves some, I would say, education of the client to convince him to perform this Sprint Zero with us. So is it a problem? Is it a challenge?
Yeah, it is a challenge because we have to look into the risks and history of the project's management. So several years ago, most popular way to do project, especially in Poland or in the eastern sector, was to do it in a cascade or waterfall method. Analysis often took 15, maybe even up to 20% of the budget, and a lot of those projects did not meet the expectations that were defined in the initial phase. Also, there was often a situation where those budgets were crossed and timelines were passed. So in our minds, it is coded that thinking first and doing second is something bad. You do not do it in normal life. So whenever you want to do something like buying a new car, you do a research. You think about the advantages and disadvantages. So even your kids do it. Should I take a pencil or a pen to draw a kitty, for example? So it's a natural way of work. What was really...
But the trap here is the time scope. I mean, you're buying the car for 2 weeks, let's say, and the project can last up to 4 years, probably.
Yeah. So the trap is that there was no good frameworks to think about the way or address those things that will happen in the project. So people tried to write a book about how the project will look like in 4 years. Okay, it's we know it's a very school-like approach, but we know that it won't happen.
That sounds a little like public sector, doesn't it? I mean, they have to have a full specification of the projects they want to launch in order to get money.
Due to regulations, and we know how it looks like. There are annexes to agreements, etc. So the process of change management is crucial there. So the public sector learned a lot in such process. So they have adapted tools and techniques to for the change management. So it's a really different process that occurs in the private sector. So there are some things that are similar in this process in the public sector and the enterprise sector. However, the idea of the Sprint Zero is to set up really initial things and then switch to the Scrum framework or other Agile framework that will let you adapt and manage the changes during the project, yet having preserved the main view of the project. So we call it sometimes hybrid projects. In Fabrity, we do a lot of hybrid projects that are done in a Scrum framework, yet there are some elements of pre-configuration or pre-establishment of the project foundations that are taken really from tools like, from frameworks like PMI management. So we have to look at the project management like something that is living. So if you have a really huge project, if there are some complex things, you have to, for example, make some documentation, because whenever it's like a guide for team members to synchronize the knowledge, to do some things properly. But the level of the documentation should not exceed the work that should be done to get the project right.
It should be just enough in order to launch the project, but not too tight.
And personally, I think is the hardest things to know the word enough, because it really depends on the knowledge, the experience of project managers, engagement of the team. Yet, when the Sprint Zero is defined, when the team members are engaged, they know the goal, they know what should be done, they know that, for example, this app that will be created in the corporation will help some people in such a matter that was defined in the Sprint Zero. For example, manage the documents or address the workflow of signature of documents, because those documents were lost some time ago. So you have to look on the goal, you have to look on the idea that is behind the project, yet a good documentation that is made just during the project, like using tools like Figma in terms of design, using project management tools, etc. The documentation itself will happen, but it should not be the goal itself. In waterfall techniques, the documentation is one of the first goals that is defined, that defines the project. So I think it's not appropriate for the new times.
Okay, Grzegorz, so we talked a little about Poland and public organizations, well, a few years ago. How does it look now in Poland, and how does it look now in the Western Europe? How does our clients work?
There are some good things that happen because I identify very good things that happen in the enterprise sector, also in the startup industry, especially in the United States and in Western Europe. So also now it is combined with the use of AI and those things that really move fast forward things up to 10 or 12 times even. So the idea is to engage a body or a cell of competences like business analyst, like an architect, like an UX designer, like specific competence that knows about sector problems or pain points and touch points that will be in the project. So the use of these competences, it's now becoming the obligatory setup of the team. So earlier, even Scrum teams were acknowledged like a product owner. There were defined team members, mostly as software developers. Now the teams are managed combining very different sectors. For example, in such a sprint structure, in terms of competence, may engage people like e-commerce specialists, sometimes, for example, sales specialists, people that work in the logistics. You have to think about the project in a very new way, because effectiveness comes from the knowledge. If you have a tool that aggregates this knowledge and transforms it into a form of definition of done, then it helps you to manage the project in an easy way. So modern organizations like enterprise sectors, startups, scale-ups, all let's define it as a Western sector, also the emerging India, they create something like process of digital transformation. So I call myself as a digital transformation manager, but it's a combination of different skill sets. The team members of such Sprint Zero should have knowledge in terms of analysis, in terms of design, in terms of a little bit of programming knowledge. You can engage architects, you can engage specialists in terms of front-end or back-end development. So it's not only the role of one person, or it's not a combination of role of specializations. It's more like having those specializations in a form of one body that helps you to achieve the project. So this is a huge difference. And I think that scale-ups and startups do it naturally because they have lack of money often and they have to base on resources they have. However,
especially now.
But if you look into corporations like Microsoft, if you look into the corporations like Google, if you look into, for example, Uber, you see that a lot of processes transformed into the form of, we call it Navy SEALs teams. Maybe it's not a very good example, but you have to think outside the box and you have to know how to manage in a really difficult environment. And only people that have a knowledge that covers a lot of things in the organization that are truly effective to manage the project in a holistic way. Are you getting the idea?
In other words, they are looking for highly skilled specialists working in agile approach.
However, also they are looking for people that can bring out something like a process, or they're looking for leaders that can manage those competences, because sometimes there are people that know a lot, but sometimes you have a structure where when you have specialists that are really great in what they do, because of the organization, they are limited to some specialties, So they're looking now for leaders that can manage those competences, those people, and try to get what is the best from the team, and then create something like a body that is really effective in the pre-configuration of the process. When the project is defined, when the velocity is defined, when the backlog is defined, there is the operational work, But in the initial phase of the project, it's more important to acknowledge the things that should be done to address the goal in terms of different stakeholders. So the end user needs are expected.
Okay, Grzegorz, so would you dare to list some key points how to succeed with Sprint Zero?
There is no definition of the step of the Sprint Zero itself. We've managed to do something like a framework of Sprint Zero. So if you would like to check Fabrity.com or a blog, so you can check up the framework description. However, the steps are like... I think first should be a definition of the product objectives, the involvement of the team. So the goals of the project in terms of the organization and the goals of the team that should be managed. So like a foundation of the work that should be done. Then defined should be length of the Sprint Zero. So if you look into the roadmap, if you look into the size of the project, you have to decide what should be the length of the Sprint Zero. For example, 2 weeks, sometimes 1 day. You just have to get the thing, what should be addressed to help you set up the project. Then you have to conduct something like a stakeholder interview. So you have to look into the personas who is responsible for the project, who has impact on the project. Sometimes, for example, there is, if you have in mind an application that will be done for the document management process, you have to think about personas, not only end users like the accountants department, but also, for example, persona like an office manager. So someone who will be involved in the process. So all those information taken from the minds of those personas will be helpful. Then you have to inspect existing data that is related to the project. So for example, is there knowledge storage in the company? Maybe there are some employees that work 10 years in organizations. It's a tip for analysts that are very new to the organization. It's always good to talk with people that are in the organization more than 2 or 3 years, because they may have some knowledge that will help you maintain the project and get the holistic view. Then you can conduct, it's not necessary or obligatory, but you can conduct a market and user research. What I defined under this: if your stakeholder is internal, market research, your market is your organization then. So you can take what is great from the tools and techniques. One of my frameworks that I really, really like is Google framework, UX framework. So you can use those tools.
So this design sprint, other words.
Yeah, but it's more like the tools and techniques that are used inside, like mind mapping. You can make simple research, an interview, all the things. You just have to talk with people. So this is crucial. If you talk with people, your role...
Let's not go there. I mean, we can do, second podcast about design sprint. So market research,
crucial.
Market and user research is the end point. What's next, Grzegorz?
Yeah. But conducting market and research analysis, by this I mean to write defaults in form of specification or in form of things that should be tracked.
So attitudes, pain
So,
points, and motivations, basically.
yeah, for example.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Then you have to see what's going on in the architecture.
Mhm.
So you have to develop an architecture plan. It may be on really high level, but this comes also with the project feasibility in terms of, for example, costs of maintenance, cost of changes that will be done in the organization. You have to plan resources, availability of those resources. You can adjust the things. It's one of the points or key things you can do with a partner like a Fabrity, because, for example, you sometimes don't have to have competences that are very specific. However, they may not be specific for a software house like Fabrity. So this is also about the knowledge transfer we were talking about earlier. And review the information, review the plan, try to eliminate unnecessary tasks that won't bring you any value, try to update stakeholders. So try to build at the end a high-level plan, what should be done and what is the definition of done. So you see, this is also Scrum Managed, the Sprint Zero Scrum Managed, the definition of done for the Sprint Zero. For example, a specific plan, a guide, sprint definition, a backlog, architectural view. So those definitions of done may be very different depending on the specificity
so
of the
the
project.
outcome of Sprint Zero is something you should review, refine, or adjust, and it should not be treated as some kind of strict guideline not to be crossed during the project itself.
Because I was also a project manager for several years, I always try to view, it's like a tip for managers that do Sprint Zero. You have to look into the data and see what lacks or what is the lack of data that helps you to define the project. So sometimes it may be end user data like research, sometimes it may be something else. But at the end, you have to know the goal and you have to know what you're building. So it's like in this example of the house. You know that you want a house with a pool, for example. You know that you have to have space for the kids where they can play, etc. Those things. You have to think like stakeholders. You have to go into those personas, into the minds of those personas and summarize it and compromise it. Because sometimes you may have a lot of stakeholders. I remember projects where there were 50 people on board and with different concepts. So one of the roles of your roles in such a Sprint Zero is to try to compromise things to get a common goal of the project.
Okay, so I think we can draw a line here as for these points you were trying to list. Thank you for that. So this all looks very, very nice and very promising, but as in life, there are some flaws, I would say. So could we just, keep the balance? What are the flaws of Sprint Zero?
Many managers, the Sprint Zero is like something that doesn't bring software. So it's not defined under the Scrum framework.
So it's not a sprint.
Yeah, so it's not a sprint yet. If you think about the Scrum methodology, what is the definition? You bring value. So whenever you bring value, so if you have defined the definition of done, you have defined the things that will happen after the Sprint Zero, so then you get the value. If you get the value, you can use this data for the project qualification. So, projects should not be acknowledged only in terms of technology. So the cons of this is that if you talk only with the IT department, they may not see the value. It's not a rule, but sometimes if there are very limited competences of 1 or 2 or 20 departments, those departments take only the view that they are fit in. So your role is to educate, to show the value, to define this value, to compromise, and then the lack of software that should be delivered it's not the cons, it makes a pros of it. So
Well, okay, but I feel that you will one way or another take these steps described, and if we call it Sprint Zero, we call it business analysis. I mean, this allegation is more about the name itself rather than actual value of the process that you're launching before the actual project. So I understand your point, but I feel it's something nice that we said about it, but doesn't really matter. Some people probably will be unhappy with that statement, but well, I also came across something like that Sprint Zero framework is not user friendly.
Well, I think it's because of the tools and techniques you have to use. So the Sprint Zero should not be just a simple doc. So you have to build a definition of done. To build a definition of done, you should use tools and techniques that help you to manage this. So for example, if there is a mind mapping process, if there is a research process, it should be wrapped up some of a form that you have to use. So the user friendliness is often understood like lack of elasticity. And it's really mind blowing because the idea of the Sprint Zero is to use the elasticity of your mind. However, define and transform it into the form of a project. So a project is a state of several things like budget, costs, timeline, resources, etc. So you have to use some tools and techniques that may not be so user-friendly. So if someone does the Sprint Zero that has no experience, it may be often understood as something that is really hard for those people that do it for the first time. It's more close to the role of an UX designer. For example, for UX designer, it's a normal, or business analyst, it's a normal way of working with people when you have to educate them, to talk with them and hear them. That's the difference. Because you may talk with someone and not hear him. So you have to transform it in your head and get the information you want to have and then use them into the project. And your role as a team member or sometimes a setup of people that are engaged in this process is to educate, to feel comfortable all the team members that are engaged in the Sprint Zero. So the user friendliness mostly relates to the misunderstanding of the process, not the tools used, because it's just a general framing. Tools may be adapted, but to understand the role and understand the things that happen during the process. So this is crucial, I think.
Okay, and what about, there was something about setup of the environment. Some people don't like the idea of setting up environment in Sprint Zero, which would be the part of it.
I remember one of the trainings that Microsoft were doing in the business analysis. The general idea was to configure or set up environments that help project owners and project managers, scrum masters, etc., a lot of people that manage projects, to help them achieve their goals. So for example, this setup environment in a large project may be a setup of a team, tools, resources that help you do the goal. Sometimes there may be an independent environment like a cell that helps in research, a cell that helps in analysis, that may be co-managed or co-used among the project members of different departments. So you have to think about it in matter of efficiency, a matter of the things that will help you. If you are a large organization, do a lot of large projects that are often managed, for example, for 3 or 4 years, then the setup of the environment may be different because it may be set up of resources, tools, qualified staff, etc. If you do a lot of projects that are constantly done, they're small, etc. So you can set up a 1 cell or 2 cells that just help the process. So the environment then is understood as a setup of cells, of people, of competences, etc.
Okay, Grzegorz, I will try to do a short wrap-up of things we've said. If I'm missing something, feel free to join me here. Pre-project activities such as Sprint Zero are crucial, however we name them, for creating clear product vision and ensuring level of quality.
And set up the goal. So you have to understand the organization. So this is crucial in any type of the project.
And this Sprint Zero approach, or any other analysis, if you prefer other names, is effective in identifying business requirements before implementation, addressing concerns, and meeting unique needs for any type and scale of project.
That's right.
Okay, and well, maybe the third and the last, it provides a user-friendly software development process for improved effectiveness and efficiency.
Yeah, and I would like to add something else into this, because it's not only about the software development. I think about Fabrity as something much bigger, because a lot of projects we have done were done in terms of business analysis, and sometimes we had to learn some new things to manage the project. So it's not only about the software development, but also about the specificity or the knowledge, the sector knowledge that is brought by you in form of a know-how you bring into the project. So Sprint Zero enables you to define this user-friendly process of development of the project, not only the software development, but the project. So it's a combination of knowledge, of know-how, sector knowledge. It's a combination of knowledge about the software developments, about the UX UI optimizations, about the e-commerce thinking. It's a second topic we can talk sometimes later. So you have to look at the process in a holistic way. So I will wrap it up, those 3 points, maybe 4. I would wrap it up them as a holistic approach to project management, but not only software development.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Grzegorz, for your input.
Thank you very much.
Till the next time. Thank you.
Thank you.